Hey Gateway, this is Pastor Jason. Welcome to Gateway Midweek, and we're excited this evening to have Bill Yoshimoto with us. And so he's been with us before, but excited to have him back. Actually, I think the first time we did this, we were all on a Zoom call because the other people that were there, who was that? That was Seth and Lindsay Reed.
Yes.
And there was some, they had some interaction, or he did, with a possible employee that could have COVID, and I know Bill had the same kind of a situation, and so luckily we had the technology to still gather together and meet and
It's a
talk.
sweet time.
Yeah,
it was a nice time.
Yeah, it was.
I'd rather be face to face, but wow, that was great technology.
Yeah, and so in that discussion in that Gateway Midweek, we talked about discipleship, and we're going to continue with that topic tonight, and asking the question, who are you discipling? We're going to kind of unpack that a little bit this evening. But before we kind of jump into that, I've known Bill, I'm trying to think how long we've known each other.
You might have been just right out of high school.
Yeah. So I turned 45 in October. And so I think we probably met around the same time, right out of high school. So it's got to be the better part of 20 plus years.
Yeah, I think so.
That I've known you. In fact,
You've aged well, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah, I shaved away all the oldness is what I did. But, I was thinking about the first time I met you, Bill. You came to the youth group and you spoke. Back then you were part of the DA and worked there. And so I remember you came in it was like a tan color suit. I don't know why I remember the color of the suit, but it was a tan color suit. And you were sharing I remember you were sharing about one of the cases, and you had a doll with you. That was
yes.
part of the story of the case. And so maybe we'll tell that story on a different time. But that's my first recollection of remembering of who you were and just being introduced to you. And so I thought we'd kind of start it off. Most of us have seen Bill. Bill, he has been on staff here. He's been on the deacon board here. Him and his wife, Judy, are part of, everybody loves Judy, which isn't a sitcom. That's an actual statement. But we all love Judy. Your kids have grown up here and now are adults and living life, and now you're a grandfather.
I'm a granddad, yeah.
And so, which is awesome. But I started thinking we should start off. I've never heard Bill's story of how he came to Christ, and so I thought we'd kind of launch there and have you kind of share a little bit of that story and let us know. Sure.
It's an interesting story. Back in the days when I was entering college, it's between my freshman and sophomore year. It was a time of great social and political upheaval back in that day. The Vietnam War, Cambodia, the poverty movement, all those things.
Yeah, thank God we're all past that now.
Yeah, right. We get along so well. It's amazing. And being a young guy, I'm always looking for meaning in life, and I felt this emptiness, and I was trying to figure out how to get that hole in my life filled. And so I started looking around, and in my high school, every day somebody would OD in the hallways. It was an ugly sight. And I hated smoking. It hurt my lungs. So anything to do with that kind of stuff, I knew it wouldn't fill my life. So I figured it was friends. And then the friends always let you down. And then I thought, well, maybe it's getting involved in social movement. So I started doing the peace movement, the social movement. And, the more you did, the more frustrated I got. And eventually it got to the point where everything I tried just wasn't filling that gap. And a friend of mine invited me to go to a camp. And I said, sure, because I love backpacking, love camping. And so he said camp, and my mind was, we're going to go backpacking. And so I load up all my gear, I get in the car, and we wind up at a Christian camp. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I got snookered. I just got this one pulled over me. But when I started looking at the folks, there was a quality of life that they had that I thought, I need to find out what that is. And so the more we sat and talked over that weekend, and I saw what people were feeling and doing. There came a point one night when I just said, I don't know if you're real or not, God. I don't know about Jesus, but I'm thinking, I said, well, this is my bargain with Jesus. I said, Jesus, I've tried everything in my life to fill that hole, and nothing's worked so far, so I'm going to give you a shot. And if it doesn't work out, I am no worse off than I was when I first started. So I'm just going to bow down and say, Jesus, okay, come on in, let's go. And he did. And it's never been the same since. He's never let me down. He's never directed me wrongly. I've made a whole bunch of mistakes. But wow, he has been there all the time. My life is full. He has filled that gap.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, the good old church camps, right?
Yeah, amazing.
So I think that's where I think I gave my life to Christ, is a church camp up in Big Bear out of L.A. when I was, I think 8 years old. So thank God for those ministries. And so cool, yeah. And just so you know, that's the short version. Bill says he has an long version. So maybe that'll be on the B side of this Gateway Midweek. And so, but hey, I wanted to jump in discipleship, right? I want to just again give you the working definition that we have of discipleship. It's the personal and relational, lifelong process of helping other believers grow to more and more maturity, and in turn, recreating the process with others. So this is happening personally, it's happening relationally. Discipleship or discipling others is really just mentoring, right? It happens in a one-on-one type of relationship, or maybe a one and just maybe a couple of more, two or three, which is kind of what we see from Christ, I mean, he had his 12, but he also had his close three, Peter, James, and John. And so he really modeled what it looked like, and we can read throughout the New Testament of Jesus' interaction that seems, there was the big interaction with the crowd, but then there was the real life-changing interaction that happened one-on-one. And so that's what discipleship is. And so, we're all called to go and make disciples. So I think there's a distinction between the word, hey, I'm a disciple of Christ, and I'm a discipler, right? So in that relationship, I'm also passing that on to somebody else and walking them through the process. And we cannot separate those two, right? Those two, they're connected. If you're connected to Christ, like if you've done what Bill has done and you've given your life to Christ, part of the deal is to disciple others and to be in relationship with others. And so I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that initially, or...
It's all about the relationship. That relationship that flows from Jesus Christ, comes in you, flows out of you, and it gets involved with other people. It's all about relationships.
Yeah. So the call that has on us, on all of our lives, is in Matthew 28:16. It says, then the 11. So Christ has died. He's resurrected. He's been teaching. He's been walking around. He's been interacting with people. He's showing people, hey, I'm alive. I've conquered the grave. And so he's continued to teach. And here in Matthew 28, it says, then the 11 disciples left from Galilee. So 11 because Judas has committed suicide. And so we're left with the 11. And so the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him. But some of them doubted. And that is an interesting comment. I wish we had more time to get into that. But I've always thought that was an interesting few set of words. They all saw him, they worshiped him, but some of them doubted. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure I am with you always, even to the end of the age, right? Teach these new disciples. God modeled this. We read in Matthew 4, where Jesus just calls out, come follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people, right? Most of the disciples were fishermen, And so these are the first two that Jesus calls out to. And it says, and they left their nets, and at once they followed him. And this is one thing I want to kind of touch on a little bit, is the fact that, as we read here, Jesus says, I will show you how to be fishers of men. So he's not telling them, you need to just go and do it, but he's saying, I'm going to show you. Like, I'm going to model what it looks like. I'm going to teach you what it looks like, so in turn, you can be empowered and you can teach others, which is what discipleship is, right? Teach others that process.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you bring out that word doubt, that some of these guys doubted.
Yeah.
And you think, these guys are the pillars of the church, right?
Yeah.
This is what everything is established on. And they have these doubts. But here, Jesus doesn't exclude them.
Yeah.
He still welcomes them. And I think that's the thing for us as disciples, as disciplers. We have doubts, but it doesn't exclude us because we have doubts.
Yeah.
So I think this is a huge, just to deal with that word doubt and know that we could still doubt, but yet go forward.
Yeah, the gospel is big enough to handle our questions, to handle our skepticism at times, right? I've had conversations with people about certain subjects, certain moral standards, if you will, and they'll ask me, "What's your opinion on certain things?" And I'll say, well, it just depends on what day of the week it is. Sometimes I feel really secure about certain things, but other times it's like, man, I'm not sure. I'm unpacking, because as you interact with people, you may come across somebody and you think, man, this is kind of maybe has changed my perspective a little bit, or given me a broader understanding. And so I totally agree, Bill, that God is big enough to handle our doubts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
And it's self-doubt, too.
Yeah,
we may think we're not qualified.
Yeah.
Well, these guys weren't qualified either.
Yeah.
But like you say, Jesus says, I'm going to teach you. I'm going to bring you along.
Yeah. So you said that teach you. Then 2 Timothy 2:2, it says, you have heard me teach these things that have been confirmed by many reliable witnesses. Now teach these truths to other trustworthy people who are able to pass them on to others. And so I wanted to just kind of briefly just stop right there. Now it says, now teach these truths to other trustworthy people. And I started to think, how do you know if somebody is trustworthy? Right? Like, how do you know? Because that's a deep kind of a statement, right? Like, teach these things to somebody who's trustworthy. Teach these things to somebody that you trust with this teaching, but also that you trust that they're going to be able to take this and recreate it. They're going to be able to take this and pass it on to other people. And to me, the only way I can think of it is that the only way that I can trust somebody, the only way, in fact, it's interesting, we use that word trust, and I think you just texted me the other day about how, hey, I'm glad I can trust you with these things, Jason. Like we were just texting back and forth, and I think we can have trust in each other, Bill, not because we're both Christian, and not because we both go to Gateway, and not because we both put our mask on, right? But we have trust in one another because we have had relationship. Like, we've had opportunities to go through some highs together, in celebrating together in baptism. I know we've done that together. We've taught the class together at times, and you teach that baptism class, and we see you all the time baptizing people. So there's so many things. But, me and Bill, not to go into all the details, but, man, over the years, me and Bill have done some battle. We have been back to back, and we have been going through life together, supporting one another, praying for one another. And we've gone through some really good times where man, we've celebrated together, but we've also gone through some rough times. And through that, I can say, man, I trust Bill. Bill can look at me and goes, I trust Jason. And as it's that relationship that's built over time. And so I think that's a key part to discipleship, is that we're not just talking about grabbing somebody you see on the street and go, hey, I want to teach you about Jesus, right? Like, I think there's a difference between discipleship and evangelism, in the sense of Evangelism, you're sharing the gospel, and maybe that's just one quick interaction. But with discipleship, we're talking almost a lifelong relationship with individuals. And so I think that that's really, really important, again, because, teach these things to trustworthy people that are going to be able to recreate the process. We've talked about it before, disciples making disciples. And that's when we talk about invite, connect, develop, and serve, as we unpack that, that's something it's a process that's not you start here and you end here. It's you start here and you go, and then you circle back through the process again and again. And each time you're learning more about Christ, and you're leading more to Christ, and you're modeling Christ. And there's that process that goes through, that's disciples making disciples, and it just keeps on, growing and growing the church and the body of Christ. So that's part of it. And so I want to, Bill, you had said, it's all about relationship. And I love this verse in John 13. In fact, we talk about, the scripture, what is the greatest commandment, right? Is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. But we read here in John 13, 34 and 35, Jesus says, so now I'm giving you a new command. And so I think Jesus knows how we are. And so he goes, let me even make this simpler for you, right? I'm giving you a new commandment, love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. See, it's all about relationship. It's all about relationship. And it is so important. It really, Bill, it grieves my spirit to see where we are as a nation, to see where we are as a community, because, it's the love that we have for others that will prove to the world that we're disciples of Christ, that will prove to the world this gospel is legit, and it brings life into communities, it brings forgiveness, it brings hope, and, so building on that relationship, like you said, it's all about relationship, creating space for doubt, creating space for the differences that all of us have, and knowing and doing that out of a fact that because Jesus said, hey, we're going to show the world, we have to love one another, right? And that's kind of where that all starts. And so I don't know if you have any.
Well, again, it all comes back down to Jesus.
Yeah.
He says to love one another as I have loved you. And if we think about the love that he has had for us, it's been unconditional. Yeah. It's unpretentious. The love that he gives is unmerited on our part. Yeah. And it's very, very diverse. I mean, he loves all of us. Yeah. With our warts, our pimples, everything. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Black, white, red, green, Vulcan, whatever it is. Yeah. He loves us. That's right. And yet that's what we have to model. Yeah. And we sure have a hard time, but it just points out how desperately we need him as a savior. Yeah. And it's not easy to model. It's not easy to model that. Discipling others, I think it can be intimidating, right? It can be fearful. Like, I don't even know where to start, and we'll talk about maybe some tangible ways, but I really want to let you know that if you're feeling intimidated about discipling others, if you're feeling fearful, I want you to know that is the correct feeling to have, right? Because it is intimidating. And what I want to encourage you with is that out of that spirit of intimidation, is that I want to encourage that, to allow that to push you towards Christ, to realize that the only way that I can be in discipling a relationship is if I'm empowered by Christ and the Holy Spirit to give me the strength, to give me the wisdom, right, and to teach the things that I need to teach, to say the things I need to say, to model the things that I need to model. Right? Let your fear and intimidations drive you closer to Christ and his word. Let it drive you to pray, right? To pray for boldness and strength, for understanding, for discernment, as you daily take biblical steps closer to Christ, and as you take steps closer to others in building those trusting relationships. Philippians 4:13, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And so
be encouraged by that fear. Be encouraged by that intimidation. Don't let it push you away from the opportunities to disciple others, but let it push you towards Christ to empower you to disciple others. And so I think that is so important. And Bill, I know you have a lot of thoughts on discipleship and discipling, and so I'd love to hear some of the things you'd love to just share with us. And kind of just share your heart.
Okay. Yeah, again, it all comes back to Jesus and our relationship with Jesus. You know, as we disciple, as we interact, you know, one of the key words in my mind is this has got to be intentional. Yeah. And the intentionality is trying to be a part of someone's life in such a way that that person becomes more Christ-like. And in turn, by helping that person become more Christ-like, you know, you yourself become more Christ-like.
Yeah.
And so it's the cycle of just pouring into someone's life what Jesus has poured into you. So Oswald Chambers describes your life as a Christian as a fountain. And the fountain is the water that Jesus poured out, and it's just being sprayed out of you in a fountain that it covers other people. But if you're not plugged into the source, then you've got nothing to give. And the interesting thing, you know, the fear comes is I don't have anything to give. I don't have the skills. I don't have, you know, the program. You know, it's not a program.
Yeah.
It's about allowing what Jesus has poured into your life, pour into someone else's life. And it doesn't matter if you've been to seminary, been to church a long time. The fact that Jesus has poured out his love and mercy in your life, you could pour that into someone else's life. And just that simple act changes lives, absolutely changes lives.
Yeah.
And so when I think about discipleship and mentoring, you know, it runs the whole spectrum of what you can do. I mean, you can sit down and do an intensive Bible study with someone, or it could be as simple and as benign as sitting down maybe once a week and having a cup of coffee and just saying, hey, how's it going? Just how's it going?
Yeah.
And that's that whole spectrum in between.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was thinking as you're talking, as you were sharing, the importance of having a spirit of being teachable, right? If I can speak maybe to those who are new in the faith or maybe those who are younger, man, pray for a teachable spirit. You know, sometimes, you know, I know, you know, I have kids that they're at that age where they, you know, I thank God because they know everything. Right? At least that's what they tell me. You know, I know. Every time we mention something, I know. But I think there's something to be said, especially in the time that we live in, is to really pray for a spirit of teachability, to be able to go, you know what, I don't have it all figured out, you know, and it would be good to have a relationship with somebody that maybe is a little bit older, that has been in the faith a little bit longer, to really mentor me and disciple me. And so I think it's important, as like you were talking about, Bill, is being willing to jump into that relationship, to being willing to disciple others and what that looks like. I think at the same time, it's also important to have a spirit of teachability and go,
Yes.
I need to be open to this process, whatever it looks like. Because again, eventually, you know, to quote, you know, maybe, Karate Kid, right? Eventually the student becomes the teacher, right? like when you look at that process. And so I think it's very, very important. I think it's
Yes, it
very
is.
important.
Absolutely important. You know, to have that teachability, that spirit of teachability. And I think part of the other side of the coin is to have some humility.
Yeah.
And to understand that, you know, this is a process. This is a journey. And I don't arrive, and I'm not complete until I'm complete in Christ, in his presence.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm here on earth, I am a learner. You know, I am being discipled. I am being mentored.
Yeah.
So I may be mentoring other people, discipling other people, but I still have to have people pouring into my life.
Yeah.
So I need my relationship with you, Jason.
Yeah.
You know, I need my relationship with my wife and these things where people are going to pour into my life and tell me what I need to take out of my eye, you know, and to correct or encourage.
Yeah.
And so even though I may work with someone else, I've got to have someone working with me.
Yeah.
So there's that teachability, you say,
Yeah.
and the humility of knowing that, you know, we don't arrive until we arrive home with Jesus.
That's right. That's right. That's such a good word, Bill. And so, yeah, it's all a process, you know. There's an old song that I remember growing up, an old Sunday school song. He's still working on me, right? And so it's a process, and like you say, I long for the day when I won't need any more faith, that I'll be able to see Jesus face to face, But until then, man, I'm a sinner, and I'm working through my faith each and every day, and the only way to do that is to be in relationship with others. And I can't tell you how important it is that the few people that I have in my life that really pour into me, and I really appreciate those relationships. And like you said, I mean, recently I've really been thinking a lot about or the word intentionality, right? Like being intentional about what certain relationships look like in my life. And so taking those steps of really, looking for opportunities to, and right now I have probably, one or two, maybe three other guys that I'm really intentional about pouring into, and in addition to that, just even in my family, right? Like just in those discipleship relationships, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. And so, it's something I think that is so key to our faith, but I just don't think that we don't talk about discipleship and discipling enough. I think it's something that we probably need to talk a lot more about. We have talked a lot about how important relationship is, and I think it's just taking that relationship to the next level. And so, Bill, every week, well, before I jump into that, I want to make sure, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, something that just popped into my mind was, all the imagery that Jesus is talking about in terms of the church, it's very organic.
Yeah.
It's biological. The church is described as the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, healthy bodies, do healthy things. And, reproduction is one of those healthy things. They happen in the lifespan of healthy organisms. And if we are a church that's healthy, we're going to be reproducing. And the reproducing is done by organisms. It's not necessarily done by organizations. Jesus never talked about the church as a program. He never talked about the church as a structure or a building. It was always organic.
Yeah.
It was always, the body, the human, imagery. And I think one of the reasons why maybe we don't disciple enough is we've gotten locked into this imagery of the church as a building, as an association or a movement.
Yeah.
It's not. It's organic. It's us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think, for me, my wife Denise and I, we've had a lot of conversations. Well, basically because we've been stuck in a house together for 6 months, but we've had a lot of conversations over the past 6 months. Is the fact that these things have been, like you talk about the building, these things have been kind of removed from the equation, right? And so, what does my faith look like? What does my relationship with God look like? What does the church look like when we kind of remove these things? And to me, it just points out how important the church is Monday through Saturday, right? How important the church is. I just was reading something recently, and it said, the church is wherever you go. And I thought, man, what a great statement. Wherever I am, that's where the church is.
Yes.
And so it's just something that, when you really think about that, it's just like, man, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so, being intentional. And so, every week we kind of, when we kind of end these Gateway Midweeks, we always talk about what are some tangible things that you can do this week to start. And this week, we're talking about discipling and discipleship. And so, one thing I want to say, when you maybe think about, well, I don't even know where to start, when it comes to discipling others. I don't even know, do I just walk up to somebody that maybe doesn't know Christ and say, hey, I want to disciple you, I don't know, maybe, but, I would say, for me, I would start with modeling what a relationship with Christ looks like. Model that in your everyday life. Model that to your wife or your husband. Model that to your kids. Model that to your family. to the neighbors that live around you, to the people that you work with, co-workers, right? Like just start to model what it looks like to be in real relationship with Christ, right? And as you model that, and the Bible is very clear that what that looks like, and we've read it here, is your love for one another, right? And so as you model that, it will move you to action. It will move you to put that into action each and every day on just loving and accepting others, whatever your context is throughout the week, wherever your circles of influence are throughout the week. And that's where I would start. Just start modeling those things, start living out your faith, and then as that kind of progresses, through that will come relationship, and will come growth in that relationship, which will lead to opportunities to, like Bill said, maybe just sitting down once a week and either through on Zoom or just a phone call or just maybe out in your front yard, and just start to unpack life and unpack faith and start to ask questions, and how do we respond, and how do we support each other, and what does that look like, and use the things that God has allowed in your life, and use those things to help others see Christ in their life. And so that would be one thing. So what would be one thing maybe you could encourage others to start this week when we talk about who are you discipling?
And, I'll second what you just said about modeling the love of Christ to others. And we've mentioned intentionality. And I think that's one of the keys for moving forward here, is that we have to be intentional in our relationships. And, here at Gateway, we have an oikos card, right? And we're filling out names of people who are involved in some sphere of activity that we're involved in. And so whether it's neighbors or coworkers or fellow students or whatever it might be, we're constantly involved with people. Even during this COVID time, we're still involved with people. Yeah. And I have to make that step to think, I'm just not being a neighbor to somebody, but I have to intentionally think how I'm going to engage my neighbor. And so make that list, of people who are around you, and opportunities are always there, and then we have to intend to make a difference.
That's right.
And making a difference may be as simple as just sharing what Jesus has done in your life, or extending some graciousness.
Yeah, that's great. That's, you talk about, those people that God has intentionally put in your life, right? And you start to, I think when you jump back, you start to think, how come I keep running into this same person all the time? But trust me, there's a reason behind it. It's not just a coincidence, right? I think those are the divine opportunities that God has put, for us to really to live out that call that He's put on all of our lives, is to go and make disciples, right? Is to do that, being empowered by Christ, and to be intentional about it. And so, man, I can talk about this topic all day long, but at the end of the day, this really only happens when we put it into action. And yes. So Bill, man, I've appreciated it. We've had a lot of talks about discipleship. We've had a lot of talks about what that looks like, and how do we, get the people that that we've been blessed with to lead here at Gateway. How do we continue to push people and encourage people and model, what that looks like? And so Bill, I appreciate you, and like I talked about, appreciate your wife, Judy, and just, really, I would say I just appreciate your heart, just for people in ministry, and just a longing to see people really come to a true relationship with Christ. And I think, what's been a staple for me over the years is when you're there in the baptism and you grab the mic and you say, "Hey, Gateway," and you're just so excited. And so it's been great to have you here. It's been great to be in a relationship with you for so many years. And so, any final words? Any?
Thank you very much. And again, Jason, thanks for your trust in me. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. No. So, hey, Gateway, thanks again for joining us this Gateway Midweek. I hope it's been encouraging to you. I know this is another topic, I think, that is just part of the Invite, Connect, Develop, and Serve. As we talk about that, as we unpack it, and discipling others is so important. And so if you need any encouragement in that, if you need any resources in that, if you need anything at all, let us know. Again, we want to encourage you. In fact, I was talking to somebody the other day that's part of our leadership for divorce care, and they didn't even know that we were meeting here on site in the parking lot on Sunday mornings. And so they've completely have missed that. So I get it in the busyness of life. You know, we can very easily forget the fact that we have Zoom groups going on, so people can still be able to connect. We have support care ministry that just is getting ready to launch. Our grief share starts this coming up Monday, and we've just launched our divorce care. And so there's support care ministry. We're continuing to work on helping others, praying for one another, providing hopefully some therapy, some counseling coming up. And so, again, we're working through these things to stay connected and support you in everything. So, again, I want to encourage you every Sunday morning, 8:30 and 10:30 online. We've got our kids church that happens at 9:45 online. And then we meet here on campus, out in the parking lot if you're able to be there at 9 o'clock. And so whether on site or online, we're still connecting, we're still moving forward. And God is still changing lives. And so thanks for joining us tonight. Bill, thanks you for being here and sharing your heart. And we will connect with you again, Gateway, because that is what we do. We love you and we miss you. Have a great week. God bless.